dispensationalism. But before we go there, let's go with denominations. This is something that we really kind of need to understand where the origins came from, and I think that'll help us in our study of dispensationalism. So in Europe, each country had a major religious denomination before the Americas, and England was Anglican, Holland was Dutch Reformed, Greece was Greek Orthodox, Northern Germany and Sweden were Lutheran, Switzerland was Calvinist. So when people migrated to America, they designed the colonies in the same respect. In his book, Change to Chains, William Federer describes as colonies were originally founded by the different Christian denominations. Virginia was Anglican, Massachusetts was Puritan, New York was Dutch Reformed, Delaware and New Jersey were Swedish Lutheran, Maryland was Roman Catholic, Rhode Island was Baptist, Connecticut and New Hampshire were Congregationalist, Pennsylvania was Quaker, Carolinas were officially Anglican but populated with others, and Georgia was Protestant.
What was Massachusetts again?
Massachusetts was Puritan. And so let's find the basics of the Anglican religion. And the Pope would not grant a divorce to King Henry VIII. And he was married to Catherine of Aragon, which was the daughter of King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Spain. King Henry VIII became the head of the Anglican Church and granted himself a divorce. So he separated from the Catholic Church, started the Church of England, which is also the Anglican Church, and got his divorce. And in 1533, Henry married Anne Boleyn and was the mother of Elizabeth. You ever hear Queen Elizabeth? While Catherine was the mother of Mary, which if you ever heard of Bloody Mary. Okay, and after Anne, Henry married Jane Seymour, which was the mother of Edward. And I believe Edward became king whenever he's like 9 or 10 years old, somewhere in there. The doctrine of John Calvin was the foundation of the Puritans, the Congregationalists, and Baptist denominations. Holland and Germany were influenced by the Reformed churches, okay? And Luther translated the Latin Bible into German. William Penn, which he lived from 1644 to 1718, was a Quaker, but he took in the Mennonites, gave them asylum, and they were to go into Pennsylvania. So as America tolerated, I've got allergy stuff going on here, so if I'm not being clear, I'm sorry. As America tolerated more and different religions, more denominations were established. Church schisms developed during the Revolutionary War, and we'll get there in a little bit. Puritans wanted to purify the Anglican Church. So King George III, which was the king during the Revolution, he was the head of the Anglican Church, and the Puritans wanted to purify the Anglican religion. And so King George III didn't want to be purified, so that caused some major problems. And he was the head of the Anglican Church in Britain, and the Civil War, which was a war between the states, produced many new denominations. So basically, it developed more denominations because everybody split up, okay? Because you had like the Anglican Church, you had ones that wanted to stay with Britain, but then you had a lot of what they called dissenters, and they wanted to separate from Britain, which caused war. So this kind of gives you an overview of how the denominations are set up, or how they originated, or why they became what they became. And it's like we said before, there's like over 200 denominations in the United States, to this day. And this is where they all come from, is everybody has a little bit of interpretation, or they can't get along because of political stuff going on, things of that nature. And so they have what schisms are, whenever they have infighting within the church or within the denomination. Okay, so remember last time we talked about Christian ethics, and we discussed that Christians needed to be different than other people. They need to separate themselves from the world. They got to be in the world, but they've got to be separated in their ideologies and things of that nature. And remember, I said that King James says that we're kind of a peculiar bunch, and that's a good thing. I mean, you would think that might be bad, but actually that's a good thing, because we're different from everybody else. And so I've got a report here from Jonathan Kahn, which is in the Hope of World Sapphires. He sends this out every month, and this is September's 19. And it has devotionals and stuff, but I wanted to read the letter that was in the front of it. And it says that nowadays, we're talking about denominations are shrinking. And I think you'll understand this after I read this to you. It says, what will faith look like in the end times? End time prophecy appears to give us a picture of both light and darkness. The findings of a major study sheds light on where we are and where it's heading. First, what's happened to evangelicals or born-again believers? In 1972, the beginning of a period looked at in the study, the percentage of Americans who called themselves evangelical was somewhere around 16%. Just 5 years later, in 77, that number had increased to around 24%, or 1 in 4 in Americans. By 1993, it reached its peak at 30%, or almost 1 in 3 Americans, a staggering number. From 1993 until now, the number has decreased back to 24%, where it was in 1977. So we're decreasing. We're going the opposite way. Okay, what about the mainline Protestant denominations? This would be Episcopalian, Methodist, your mainline, okay? What is revealed here is a change of stunning proportions. In 1972, the percentage of Americans in mainline Protestant denominations was around 28%, peaking in 1974 at a little over 30%. But since then, the percentage has plummeted to just over 10%. So in other words, it went from about 1 in 3 Americans to now 1 in 10 Americans. And this is your Protestant mainline denominations. But the most dramatic phenomenon concerns the godless, or those of no religion, from atheist to agnostic. Okay, remember we gave a definition. Atheist literally means without God. Agnostic means that you don't have a knowledge of a God, basically. And you can't see how God works in your life. Ag means without, and Gnostic is knowing, okay? Just simply those of no specific faith. In 1972, they made about 5% of the population. In the early 1990s, the same period that marked the beginning of the decrease in evangelicals, the number of those with no religion suddenly shot up. They now make up around 24% of the population. The same as evangelicals. So there's almost as many agnostics and atheists as there are evangelicals now. That's what he's saying. In other words, they multiplied 5 times over. And if the study broke down these trends by age, looking at the younger generation, the result would likely be even more startling. So we're saying that younger generation, more of them tend to be agnostic and atheist than previous generations. What does this reveal? America, at least as a whole, is becoming noticeably more unchristian and ungodly. At the same time, the form of Christianity that is most dramatically decreasing is mainline Protestantism. And all those that I talked about before, which came from Europe, those would be your mainline denominations. And then they came from Europe over to the United States or America, and then this is where you need to understand that each colony, just like Europe had their own major denomination, each colony, whenever they came, and they came because of persecution in their country, they came over to Americas, and they still had the same denomination within each colony, which I find amazing. In fact, they say that some of the denominations, whenever they taxed the people, they would take in enough money to take the tithe, and the government would actually pay the ministers. And the whole idea behind this is that they believed that the only way that they could form a free government, free country, where people had rights, is if they had virtue. Because as you lose virtue, you can't really be in charge of, how am I going to say this? You can't really be in charge of the people, because if they're not virtuous, they can't be free. Does that make sense? In a way? I don't know. We'll think about that some more, but basically it aided the government for the ministers to preach virtue, so that the people would be self-governing. And that was the whole idea of the United States, was to be self-governing. Okay? I don't know where I left off here. At the same time, the form of Christianity that is most dramatically decreased is mainline Protestantism, which is known for having departed from biblical truths. Evangelical or born-again Christianity, though affected by the culture's apostasy, is showing strength and vitality. But how long this may depend on the younger generation and whether we have revival or not. Revival seems to be the thing that America especially needs the most of right now. It has been a long time since we've seen a revival. You see breakouts every now and then in certain places, but they don't tend to last that long. What the findings appear to show is a phenomenon I've shared on in the past, that of polarization. The middle is disappearing. The gray is being removed. What remains will be either very dark or very light, or both. This month we pray for revival. Shine your light, spread the word, and get any grayness out of your life and get to the light. Okay? Okay, let's talk about dispensationalism. So, last week I said if you would Google it and then go to Wikipedia, these are the highlights of what I came up with. And some of this is Wikipedia that I did a long time ago, and this is some newer stuff that I came up with. I kind of combined them the best I could to hopefully make sense. It's, okay, the definition of dispensationalism. It is a belief system of historical progression as revealed in the Bible, consisting of a series in God's self-revelation and plan of salvation. Dispensationalists profess a definite distinction between Israel and the Christian church. They believe Israel as a nation will embrace Jesus as their Messiah toward the end of the Great Tribulation, right before the second coming. Okay? A video that I watched, and this has been a long time ago, but it was on TV, which is Trinity Broadcast Network, and it portrayed a teenage girl. Her name was Margaret McDonald, and she lived to 1850, and they think to approximately 1840. She didn't live very long, only about 25 years. and she was born in Glasgow, Scotland, and it shows her in a bed, and like I say, she's a teenager, and she was really sick, high fevers and things of that nature, and is reported to have been the first to assert a theory about the pre-tribulation secret rapture. Okay? And Margaret has been given credit for experiencing many charismatic gifts. So the idea is that she was sick in bed and stuff. She started having these prophetic utterances. And out of this came what they call the pre-tribulation secret rapture. I'll describe that here in a minute. So along comes John Nelson Darby. He lived from 1800 to 1882 and has been accused of taking this theory as his own. They're saying that Darby stole Margaret McDonald's idea of becoming this pre-trib rapture thing going on. And but he adamantly denied it. And there's like 3 reasons of why they say that that's probably not possible that he did that. Because they say if you really look at the things that Margaret McDonald said, she was more of a post-tribulationist instead of a pre-tribulationist. And that he believed that these prophetic utterances that she had were demonic. So that's number 2. And then number 3, they're saying that Darby's theory about pre-tribulation rapture was reported in January of 1827, while McDonald's report didn't come out until 1830. So it'd be hard for Darby to take in her report if he actually put his out before hers. So let's talk about John Nelson Darby. He is considered the father of modern dispensationalism. He was born in Westminster, London. He was ordained in the Anglican Church in Ireland. And as an evangelist, Darby was influential with the Plymouth Brethren. Darby is sometimes credited with originating the secret rapture that we've been talking about. This is a theory wherein Christ will suddenly remove his bride, which is the church, and from this world before the judgments of the tribulation. So that's where they get the pre-tribulation. Okay? Classic dispensationalism began with Darby and was succeeded by the theologian C.I. Scofield, which this is one of his Bibles. And he lived from 1843 to 1921, each of whom identified Pentecost, which they take Acts 2 as the beginning of Pentecost, with the start of a church. But I guess some people believe that the church actually began with the ministry of Paul after his salvation, which would be your Damascus Road experience. They're saying that's when they believe that church actually started. But I think the majority believe it was Acts 2 and the 120 up in the upper room. Okay? Dispensationalists are premillennialists who affirm a future 1,000-year reign of Jesus Christ. The vast majority profess either a pre-tribulation rapture, and then there's a small minority professing either a mid-tribulation or a post-tribulation rapture. Dispensationalism was adopted, modified, and made popular by the Scofield Reference Bible. It was introduced to North America by James Inglis. He lived from 1813 to 1872. And this came through the monthly magazine Waymarks in the Wilderness, published intermittently between 1854 and 1872. So dispensationalism was boosted after Dwight L. Moody. He lived from 1837 to 1899, learned of the theology from an unidentified member of the Brethren during 1872. publication of the Schofield Reference Bible by the Oxford University Press during 1908 displayed notes on the pages of a biblical text. Here a little bit, I'll read those 7 major dispensations, okay? Evangelist and Bible teacher Louis Sperry Schaeffer, 1871 to 1952, founded the Dallas Theological Seminary during 1924. Bob Jones University, Moody Bible Institute during 1886, and Bible Institute of Los Angeles, which is Biola, during 1908, along with Reuben Archer Torrey. He lived from 1856 to 1928, and Hal Lindsey are prominent dispensationalists. Dispensationalism has become very popular with American evangelism. And this is the important part that I want you to understand, especially among non-denominational Bible churches such as Baptist, Pentecostals, and charismatic groups. Conversely, Protestant denominations that embrace covenant theology as a whole tend to reject dispensationalism. And that's the point I wanted. That's why I wanted you to understand denominations, where they came from, and the difference between the denominations. And that's one of the main differences, is some believe in dispensationalism and others, which are more your Protestant mainline denominations, don't necessarily agree with. Okay, Israel's alliance with televangelist John Hagee began in the early 1980s as he met with every prime minister of Israel since Menachem Begin. In 2005, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that we have no greater friend in the whole world than Pat Robertson. And Pat Robertson was a televangelist and a politician. Dispensationalist themes for the basis of popular Left Behind series of books, and I believe it was movies too, produced by Tim LaHaye and Jerry somebody, I can't remember his last name. Okay, I told you that I'd give you these 7 dispensations, and like I say, it's in this book. And it used to be the Reference Bible, but now they call it the Schofield Study System. Cyrus Schofield, he 1843-1921, which I already said. He wrote the Schofield Study Bible displaying dispensation doctrine. According to Schofield, dispensation is a period of time during which man is tested in respect to his obedience to some specific revelation of the will of God. Okay, so let's go with the first dispensation, which is a dispensation of innocence. Basically says man was created innocent, placed in a perfect environment, and charged with a simple test with consequences explained. And 1 Timothy 2:14 I wanted to look at. I got to put my glasses on, guys. I can't see. Okay, 1 Timothy 2:14 says, and Adam was not the one deceived. It was the woman who was deceived and became a sinner. So the idea of this is that Eve was just deceived, but Adam chose to disobey because he was tempted by Satan. God judged him and expelled him from Eden. Okay, the second dispensation, which is a dispensation of conscience. Henry Clarence Tyson, okay, and remember that I said Dallas Theological Seminary was one of the dispensationalists, and it was started by, I think it was Sperry maybe, and Dr. Tyson taught at Dallas Theological Seminary. And also, I believe he taught at Wheaton And anyway, this is what he has to say about conscience. It says, knowledge of self in relation to a known law of right and wrong. Okay? And then there's a man by the name of Kevin J. Conner, and he wrote a book, Foundations of Christian Doctrine. And it says that conscience bears witness of the law written on the human hearts of humans, okay, which is also Romans 2:14. Let's look at that real quick. Okay. Indeed, what Gentiles who do not have the law do by nature things required by the law, they are a law for themselves, even though they do not have a law, since they show that the requirements of law are written on their hearts, their consciences also bearing witness, and their thoughts now accusing, now even defending them. Okay. The third dispensation is dispensation of human government. God instituted a corporate relationship of man to man in human government, and this is Gordon Schofield, and Abram answered the call of God's testing. The fourth dispensation is a dispensation of promise, blessings through Abram's seed, giving territory to the Israelites and to the Church of Christ and to the Gentile nations. The fifth dispensation is a dispensation of law. Israel misinterpreted the law by seeking righteousness by good deeds and ceremonial ordinances instead of accepting Messiah, which this is found in John 1:10-11. He was in the world, and though the world was made through him, the world did not recognize him. He came to that which was his own did not receive him. They're talking about the Israelites or Jewish people. And the sixth dispensation is dispensation of the church, which we talked about a while ago, which is Acts 2:1-4. It's when the day of Pentecost came, 50 days after Passover, 10 days after the ascension of Christ. And according to Schofield again, the church age will end at the rapture, okay? And they define the rapture as the true church will meet Jesus in the air, which is 1 Thessalonians 4:17. After that, we who are still alive and are left will be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and so we will be with the Lord forever. And the seventh, which is the last dispensation, is the dispensation which is of the kingdom. And after that, the millennium, Satan is released for a while and leads a rebellion which is put down by God. Christ casts Satan into the lake of fire and delivers up the kingdom to the Father. Much time? I really don't have much time to. Next time we're going to talk about the covenants, and like I say, that was the differentiation between the dispensation theology and covenant theology. And I just want to go through this. The goal of Basics of Faith is to be able to have a secular and or Christian society to be able to let the Holy Spirit guide them through the Bible as they read the Bible. And in this way, they can decide for themselves how the Bible speaks to them. We are preparing to take this Bible study, which I will begin next time. And what I'm doing is I'm researching things in the Bible, like the who's who of give their the name of people, and what that name means, and where they all fit into the Bible, and also places. And just a whole bunch of things that may help you get through the Bible a little easier. And I'll see you next time. Thank you.